Hi, Electric Dreams Conference. How's everybody doing? My name is Karen Palmer, and I'm the storyteller from the future. And I've come back to enable you to survive what is to come through the power of storytelling. This event is designed in conjunction as an extension of my Hack the Future Lab series, where we bring together international experts to imagine a future reality in order to hack it. However, today is even more special than that because I actually have people who are really actually living in they're time travelers because they're living in a future just slightly ahead of us. There's 4 different important themes that I cover that are important to my work. We have neuroscience, politics, race, and what it's like being a creative in these times. So I'm very excited to introduce you to my now esteemed panel and friends. I'm going to start with Dr. Bo Lotto, who is a professor of neuroscience, author and entrepreneur, and founder and head of the Lab of Misfits, which aims to expand people's perception by creating experiences that are indifferent to boundaries between science, art, design, and other forms of creativity. He's a 3-time main stage TED speaker with 9 million combined viewers of his videos. He's going to be talking today about his insight as a neuroscientist, but particularly his current research that he's doing about thriving in uncertainty, using himself as almost a test subject, which he'll tell you about further. And his findings can be shared with his community of misfits every week on Insta Live on Friday, and his blog on his labofmisfits.com website too. Hi, Bo. Where in the world are you today, sir?
Hello. I'm actually behind you. I'm not in front of you. As is so often the case. So I'm in Seattle area today.
Seattle. Okay, we're going to find out more about why Bo's in Seattle soon. So then, and what time is it over there, just out of curiosity?
Oh, it's just gone 9 p.m. 9 a.m.
So now we're going to go to the other extreme of the time zone. We're going to go to the lovely Katie Fan, who's festival director of IFVA, which is an annual awards and festival for independent short film and media arts in Hong Kong. They have a strong belief in independent spirits at the intersection of art, culture, technology, and society. She's going to be talking today about the anonymous artistic creative power that's in Hong Kong and how she's adapting ideas for her new experience for the IFVA Carnival. Katie, how are you doing today? You're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Hey, hi. Hi, I'm sorry. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, long day. So it's now midnight in my time.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for taking the time. We cannot wait to hear about your insights from Hong Kong and what's happening with arts there. I'm really excited. Then we're going to go now to Antoine in Detroit. He's a Detroit-based culture worker and curator. He's currently the head of programming at the Science Gallery Detroit. His work focuses on building participatory and collaborative experiences. And today, Antoine will be exploring the decolonization of the curatorial space and how the Science Gallery is engaging with the public to be more inclusive, specifically touching on collaboration and innovation as tools of change. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing great, doing great. Thank you for having me today.
You look like you're beamed in from a like Afrocentric universe. And what time is it over there?
It's about noon.
Cool. And finally, I'm not going to ask you where you are. It's Brooklyn in the house with Cynical Smith, one of the founders of She Shot Me Productions, a female digital media collective. She's an internet radio pioneer, an independent film producer, filmmaker, and artist management. Sim will be discussing how independent artists and filmmakers are adapting to the new future of entertainment post-pandemic. Welcome, Sin. How are you doing today?
Yes, I'm well. How are you? How's everyone?
So I'm going to go straight into the talk because I feel at the moment that the future has actually crashed into the present. I feel that We're currently living in all the sci-fi novels, disaster films and dystopian films that are out there. But that, as I said, you guys are one step ahead, I feel. And I would love to know how you've been responding and what your approach has been. I'd like to start with Bo to get a neurological context of what's happening and how your research looking at thriving in uncertainty and find out about that.
And find out about that. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, we're collectively experiencing the very thing that we evolved to avoid. We hate uncertainty. And almost every behavior we do is an attempt to decrease uncertainty. The irony is that uncertainty is the only place we can go if we're going to do anything different, if we're going to expand our perceptions. And so there's tremendous power and also fear in the I don't know. In fact, even in our education systems, almost everything we do, we're supposed to know. So uncertainty's been around forever. Even the colors you see is a consequence of uncertainty. So what we do in the lab is we try to understand not only how the brain deals with uncertainty, but also create spaces and opportunity for people to go to that very place. And what's fascinating is that there's a solution to uncertainty that evolution also gave us, which is play. Play is evolution's solution to uncertainty. So why play evolved. And if you had intention to play, you get science. In fact, I'd argue you get anything that is creative. And it's actually a way of being. It's not a process. It's not a methodology. It's a way of being in the world. And so that's what we work on, both from trying to understand the neurological principles, but also how do you create spaces that enable people to go to that very place that we often hate, but actually to want to be there and to thrive from being there. You don't thrive first and then go there. You thrive because you're there.
Oh, I could listen to you the whole day. Can you tell me a little bit about what you are specifically doing at the moment and your adventure, how you are putting yourself in this environment?
Well, unfortunately, I study uncertainty because I hate it as well. I mean, and unfortunately, it seems that every decision I make seems to put me there more and more. And I think it's partly because what I think we really need, what we love, is closure. And I mean, when you go to a club and the music and the DJ's ramping up the music and everyone's feeling the anticipation, it's in the anticipation which is our greatest reward. Your dopamine's ramping up, and then suddenly the DJ drops the beat and your body feels that. Your body feels that closure. Your brain needs closure, but closure doesn't make sense if you haven't had the uncertainty before. Right? You need to have that moment of not knowing in order to have that moment of closure and understanding. So not only do we try to be tropes, we try to be the very thing that we talk about. So about in the beginning of July, I packed up my whole flat in Greenwich Village and put it into storage and rented a car and turned left, quite literally. To be honest, I actually turned right first. I went up to Maine to get a lobster roll, but because I heard they're amazing, and you got to go to Reds, north of Portland, absolutely amazing. And then the idea is that each day I have no idea where I'm going to end up. So though it could have taken 2.5 days, it ended up taking me 18 days to get across, taking side roads, getting pulled over by the police, and skinny dipping in rivers, all kinds of things. And now I'm in Seattle, so now I've just bought a bike, and I'm going to start cycling down the west coast of the States, and then eventually drive back across the southern states. But each time with no idea where it's going to end up.
Before I go to Katie, you're making this uncertainty sound like almost romantic skinny dipping, and it's like something we should be embracing. But in terms of where we're going, what can you share?
I think it's really important. So I call it an adventure, but an adventure is not, in my view, adventure is not stepping into uncertainty. It's acknowledging, accepting the uncertainty that already exists. And it's deciding to define the uncertainty in your terms rather than its terms. And to go on an adventure doesn't require renting a car and turning left. And also, I didn't do that with fanfare. I didn't do that with celebration. In fact, it was actually a very lonely experience. There was already some deep uncertainty for various reasons that existed. It was deciding to take ownership of them and also acknowledge your own contribution to it. But adventure can be meeting someone that you've been avoiding. It can be saying sorry to someone that you've been meaning to say sorry to. It can be engaging with someone who normally you would not, well, I already said, but to engage with. It can be reading a book or writing the book that you've wanted to read. So I want to sort of democratize and demystify the idea of adventure. It doesn't require what I'm doing. That just was what it looks like for me. But it can look in any forms. But it's deciding that actually the uncertainty, I'm going to define what it means for me, and in doing so expand it. But it's acknowledging that it already exists. So it's very humbling. It's very humbling. It's in the very least, and it requires humility.
Okay, so I've kind of got that understanding and insight from I feel it's almost, it's bigger than personal, but it's a insightful perspective. I kind of want to go to Katie now to get a sense of understanding of how yourself and the Hong Kong community, particularly the creative community, is responding to the future that you currently find yourself in, and how you've had to adapt as creative and as a creative community.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for the invitation. I remember the day, actually, I remember the day I met you was 9th of June last year in Sheffield. It was exactly the first large march in Hong Kong. And that day, more than 1 million, or nearly 1 in 7 Hong Kong residents took to the streets. So a year has gone, and speaking of uncertainty, we have been living under these situations for a year long. My sharing here is not about the protest or any political opinion, but I'm going to talk about the artistic creativity and the energy generated during this year. Maybe I can show you some images here, so you can have an idea what they are, and yeah, and Stuart will be sharing the link to you in the chat. And I don't own those images or collect them. They appear on the digital world, distributed via social media messaging platforms like Telegram, WhatsApps, and AirDrops. Yes, the iPhone AirDrops. The people send images to people nearby who has the Bluetooth enabled. It is indeed a very effective tool because it does not require a particular app, and most importantly, it is safe and secure to bypass the firewall and reach the tourists from overseas or from mainland China, who are usually blocked from reading uncensored news. So these images also cross into reality. They were printed to actual poster, decorate the streets, fill up many tunnels, and turn public spaces into a canvas or an art gallery. People visit places and take many photographs, and end up the images of streets full of this creation travel back to the cyberspace and are spread further via social media. So they actually complete the O2O creative cycle. And not only poster and illustration, they are also song, animation, short films. In the beginning, when we saw such high quality works, we asked, who made them? But it actually, we gradually adapt to this new norm, and nobody would ask such a question because most of these are made by anonymous creatives. They don't leave a trace. They don't rewrite their names and identities. At first, they just want to put the word before their name, but later they have to remain anonymous because it could be deemed illegal. When the creative talents hide their names, they collectively form a new identity. On one level, this new identity represents something larger than just individual. They become a cluster of creatives not owned by any single entity. But on a higher level, the key in the movement is leaderless. So the creative network has no central authority as well. They create a sense of decentralization, think about like blockchain, it is the very definition of a democratized system. So, and then I rethink my work as an organizer of a short film and media arts competition. Like many other festivals in the world, we always look for high quality works to submit to us, and then we give out prizes and recognition. But this day, I can't help rethinking the value of the competition. Is it still relevant? Who the authority has the power to give out prizes? Are they still important? And for some years, people prefer to upload films on social media to get immediate responses like YouTube, Facebook. And now people in Hong Kong, they even hide their name in the work they took days and weeks and months to create. This new identity not only highlight the collective forces, but also challenge the core value in art making or even on the competition or festival system. The recognition is no longer relevant to them. Copyright has become obsolete. Archive and record is unimportant. So I don't have an answer, but in the contemporary world, we tend to write history, keep a record of trace, but would it be very different in the digital future? I don't know. Maybe, yeah, you guys can tell me. But lastly, I would like to say, although the million of creative output that made by Hong Kong people may not have a chance to preserve or archive or get any award, I believe the power, the energy, and the idea that they create lasts forever. So this is how we live under the uncertainty for this year and not forward to the future.
Wow, that's so powerful, Katie. Just understanding and hearing about that, because that's something that's not familiar to me. It's just like a whole new template of creativity adapting to the politics, the extreme politics and the situation. I feel it's just super profound. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go to Antoine, unless anybody else wanted to comment on what Katie or Bo has said. So Antoine is going to talk to me about decolonization of the curatorial space and how the science gallery is engaging with the public to be more inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Science Gallery, we are very much so an organization that is dedicated to involving community in the processes of science and art. And through our curatorial process, we really define some issues with it, you know? And so with that comes like the predominance that is often set in the curatorial experience. It's all surrounded by choice and authority, you know, making selections and the sort. So what we've done is create a series of engagements with our community here in Detroit that helps us dissect themes that we want to actually present. It allows us to not only be informed by our community, but to create and to seek knowledge from those who could absolutely be imperative to change within our city and our cultural landscape. One of the things that we've done is also bring in young voices into our curatorial experience. People who are high school age, college age, to really help us understand how we should go about engaging with that demographic. Science Gallery has a intention in programming and exhibitions, and that directly connects to people between the ages of 15 and 25. Those are ages that most traditional galleries and museums don't do such a good job at engaging and having in their space. And so we've dedicated a lot of our time to just that, having those young people in our space and allowing them to determine our direction. I think a lot of what we've done is not rewriting or reworking the wheel. It's things that are absolutely have been in practice, you know, in the past, but to hold on to that ideal that, you know, we are a part of an institution, and an institution that has a history of not being inclusive. We are part of an industry that has a history of not being inclusive of people of color, people with disabilities, marginalized individuals. And we see that as an important focus for us to actually connect to those people, to hear how we can best serve them. One of the things that we are also doing is developing ways to actually like strengthen our engagement, but not only in our city, but across our global network. We've been really a lot of research and development around not only our themes, but our sense of our future, you know? We have an exhibition at Science Gallery Detroit, Future Present, designed in the time of urgency. And it's an exhibition that is an interrogation of design processes across multiple disciplines. A lot of the issues within design is the fact that it is a biased industry across the board. And with those biases comes a lot of issues in regards to connecting to. And so we are taking our approach with the assistance of our mediator cohort, those are young people that actually work in our gallery, to try and experiment with engagement. Our exhibition process has definitely shifted because of the pandemic. And with that, we've had our programming and exhibition shift to digital spaces. So our programming this year will be 100% online. And we believe that, you know, it comes to a moment where we have like an accessibility potential, accessibility in terms of like being able to share our stories and programs with folks globally, and also have the opportunity to hear back from that community and see how to make our next step in terms of speaking about certain themes or presenting certain themes in our gallery space.
I think as a Black man in organizations such as the Science Gallery, and at a time just after the kind of the beginnings of the Black BLM movement, that it just makes sense for me to use that phrase, decolonization of curatorial spaces. I was like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Like, as you've got to build these systems, kind of evaluating them under that lens of biasness, as opposed to just put them back together, particularly as we move into this digital realm, is like just having that awareness is just very just inclusive by nature. To just, as we're moving forward, just every brick you're building, you're just quantifying it, looking at it. Do we need this brick? Do we need a different type of brick for what we're building? And just before we go to Cynical, is that all three of you, and Cynical do this as well, it seems to all be about community. Because even with Bo, he's kind of got to go back to the community, you know? He's kind of, his lab is now the world. He's got to go back onto the street, back out into the world. And it's this kind of, I feel this different way of communicating, which is, it's beyond digital. We're kind of finding new ways to connect with people, to reflect them and represent them in an authentic way, is I think one of the is where this, I'm seeing as one of the kind of commonalities of this panel. So Cynical, would you like to talk to us about how you as a independent content creator is like, how you've had to adapt?
I think, oh, it's noon in New York. So I think a lot of creatives have had to adapt, right? And we've been living in uncertainty since 2016, technically. It has just come to a hilt right now as this, the volcano has erupted. Everything has come to a head. So you see it in the artwork, right, in the streets of New York. It's almost like going back to the 80s with the graffiti expressing you know, the racial oppression. And so, as well as like content creators realizing that in post-pandemic, right, they took our style of creating content, and now that's what they were doing on the news, on the morning shows. They had to find ways to broadcast while people couldn't gather. So as we've always known, our people will come and search for content that is different. Back when we were streaming in the 90s, people were on dial-up modems, but because our content was different, they came to it, right? So you touched on it. It's about building communities, right? The internet is a network, and that's what entertainers are having to realize. Who there are no more tours right now, especially for independent, and I'm mainly talking about independent creatives. So there's no more touring. You have to figure out and rethink how you deal with your fan, and what type of experience are you going to give them that they can't receive right now. You know, Erykah Badu, which is a bigger artist, but she's streaming from her bedroom. That's special for some people, you know, but that's not really going to work for a hip hop artist. So they have to rethink that. And they have to rethink community, how to talk to their fans, and social media has given them that platform with the Instagram Live and things of that nature. But also for activism, like I'm seeing the youth really engage in using social media different, using it for their voices, right? Instead of going out on Saturday night, that's not happening right now. So really seeing how powerful it is, right? In the sense of they can, I work with a collective called the Brooklyn Combine, and we mentor children. One of the things they were doing before COVID hit was coding with the kids in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And so taking that knowledge they have, that now they see that, okay, the world could just go online, and that might be where it is. I think it's been heading there for a long time. You see it with the rise of all the OTTs that have popped up in the last few months. And by that, I mean over-the-top platforms like Disney Plus and the Peacock and et cetera, Hulu, Netflix, you name it. So I definitely think that these things can be done independently. And people are starting to realize the power of doing that. You don't have to go to these corporations or these traditional forms of media. You can create it yourself. So I think it forced people in a box, but it also allowed them to see the capabilities of what they have.
Can you tell us just a little bit about what you've had to do? Because you told me that you went out and bought a 5G tower, and that you had to then go and learn new software. As a content creator, you kind of had to cut out the middleman, and then you had to become the distribution and a different type of creator as well.
So I've always, my background is live streaming. But now, like the on-the-go live stream, it was like for the artists I managed, for instance, just finding ways, right? And when the pandemic hit, like I said, all the traditional networks were now using the equipment that gamers would use. And so there was everything. So I had to configure how to get my DSLR cameras through my computer, so I would have a stream that was quality, and not just look like we threw something together. So we did a record release party online, a virtual record release party. We had a concert. We used a venue that the lighting, it looked like, you know, it would have been, if there were people there, it would have been a real show. But yes, just having to search out solutions, streaming solutions, right? Because if you want a quality stream, if you just don't want to hit Instagram Live, if you want your audio quality to be good, right? I want to stand out amongst all the content that's floating. It's so much. You have to invest and then look for the best solution for your bandwidth, what you're working with. So I had to buy, like, against my better judgment, a little 5G tower, just so I can make sure that my bandwidth was enough to produce the quality of stream that I wanted.
Okay, so we have the insight from a neuroscientist, we have insight from a country which is in a lot of turmoil, but looking at how the arts is responding to that and maintaining as much impact and connection with the community as possible. We're looking at race as well, and how we can decolonize spaces as we're building them and as an independent creator. So as I said, the commonality which I'm really seeing is this kind of sense of community. And when we were having a chat earlier, Bo came up with this phrase, thank you, Bo, the intervention across diversity. So yeah, I just would like to hear any other comments you have. I've got another question about finding more about the digital implications of what you're doing, or if you wanted to comment on what each other are saying, or this aspect of this intervention of diversity.
Well, it's the intervention, but it's even more through intervention, it's integration across diversity, which I feel I hear everybody speaking to in one way or another. And if you're going to integrate across that diversity, we all speak to unfortunately not nearly enough people speak to diversity, but from a biologist's point of view, for diversity to be a challenge is a silly idea, because diversity is the engine of evolution. But what you really need to do is integrate across that diversity. And to do so, you need to go out to people and you have to speak the languages that people speak, rather than wanting them to speak all one thing. You actually go out to them and have them speak. And doing so, I think a lot of the art and a lot of the things that people are doing is increasing giving voice to other people as part of one's own art form, is creating the space for others. And in doing so, that's how you get that integration. And doing so, and the result is that you get a much more resilient system, much more dynamic, much more innovative system.
Kind of what Katie, Antoine, and Cynical are all doing, and
yeah.
yourself as well.
And Cynical as well. I feel that there is, and to do so, you have to find, not only be able to speak other people's language, you have to give them voice, but you have to, if you're going to integrate across diversity, rather, we call it celebrating the landscape of normal. Everybody makes sense to themselves, just not to other people. Right? And so you want to celebrate that landscape of normal, but to do so, you need to find something that transcends, that they're all speaking about. For us, it's perception, expanding perception. And I feel that everyone is touching perception in one way or another, whether the expression or the revelation of or expansion. So, and that creates something that everyone can speak towards, right, in their own way. So that's actually how the brain does it. It's how nature does it.
Oh, sorry, Katie, could you tell me a little bit about the festival that you're creating and how you've kind of this integration of diversity and also technology has impacted your development of this new style of festival experience?
Yeah, we are kind of at the integration right now too, because we are collaborating with artists, programmers, designers, scriptwriters, storytellers, educators, all kinds of people work together to make it happen. And we have an outdoor media art event. It's going to happen in November. It's called Ivy Everywhere Carnival. But now, obviously, it is too difficult to stage such large-scale event. Not only the pandemic, but also the social unrest in Hong Kong. So since, last summer, we planned show and then we cancel it, and then we plan it again, and then we cancel it again. And it seems like there's no safe place for us to do anything. So I don't want to trap in the cancellation loop, so we decided to give up the carnival in a reality on a fixed location. And we see a lot of art event end up turned to live broadcasting or video documentation. But the experience is quite different if you want to gather people in a festival. And the other challenge is the attention, spent on digital world. People today are more distracted than ever. Multiple device, information, entertainment, and the click rate could be quite high for the event, but the time spent actually on the artwork can be very, very limited. So we ask ourselves, what make people spend hours and hours online? For myself, one may be shopping, and another one is gaming. Therefore, we try to borrow the game idea to apply to a festival experience. And since our expertise is short films to tell a story, so we pick narrative game to begin with. The story in the game is about an ordinary human being with body and flesh, which is you, the user, and you meet a new human who has only consciousness and no body. And your mission is to help him to find his missing items. It sounds like quite cliche sci-fi storyline, except it happens here now in 2020.
A bit like shopping.
Yeah, true. And consider our daily experience. We work from home, we attend meeting and school virtually. What if the person you are speaking to is not an actual physical human being? If I mute my video, then I just keep talking. Maybe you don't know I'm really existing in the world. And I also have an experience. I have a travel agent, a friend of mine. I know her for almost 10 years. We talk on phone, we send emails, but we never met each other live in person for 10 years. So anyway, the stories goes on, and we hope we use the story in the game to connect 12 newly made artwork experience in virtual and physical worlds. So that's the reason why we have to collaborate with many different people to work together and to curate the full holistic festival experience. And it is a first trial. I don't know what would it be, but I think it could be a good start to shift the art program from location-based and event-based to a digital platform with more extensive experience for the audiences.
Karen, you're muted.
Thanks. I wanted to ask Antoine something, but before I went to Antoine, I just wanted to go back to Bo quickly, because before we were talking, Bo was mentioning about how the digital was kind of trying to replace human experiences, be substitute for it, but it could never actually be. Is that recollection accurate, or I seem to be not being accurate?
That's accurate. So the fact is, yeah, the fact is that the brain evolved in a body, and the body in the world, and it's done it for millions of years. And what people are experiencing is that right now is how essential something is that we've always taken for granted, which is the power of touch and the power of being proximate. And recently I was writing how we can, in this time, we can still touch, but to touch is actually can also be to listen, to truly listen to someone. To know someone is to not understand, it's to not know what they do and when they did it and why it's to know why they did it. It's to know what their bias and assumptions are. But that's through listening. So when someone actually feels truly listened to, they feel touched. So and what's relevant to that is the concept of intimacy. One of the things I think we're losing now is this. We've lost privacy a long time ago, but we've also been losing intimacy. So I'm wondering whether, while there is a push to the digital, whether there's also an opportunity to rethink how we do the physical. And we often think that for something to be successful, it has to be scaled. I'm wondering if we can go the opposite direction, where actually we can make it more intimate. So my lab, we turn my lab into a theater, we turn it into a nightclub, etc. But sometimes we even turn it into an experience for just 8 people. And we did one recently where everyone had to get COVID tested. They then had to be self-isolated for 3 days, etc., in order for them to actually be part of the experience. Because the fact is, we're never going to be able to get around that. But also the digital can not replace our world like virtual reality does, but through augmented reality, for instance, it can actually add value to the world. It can actually reveal something that wasn't there. So the most transformative technologies usually make the invisible visible. They enable us to see what we couldn't see before, usually within ourselves, right? So I'm wondering that there's a huge place for digital, but not to replace our world, but to augment it, to add to it. And we've been doing this for years. Clothes is augmented reality. I mean, we've been doing augmented reality for a long time, but it enables us to do what we couldn't do before. It reveals hidden truths. So we have stories, for instance, that are being left in New York, and then people can go and listen to those stories in those locations. In doing so, it diminishes loneliness because now they feel connected to the community around them, because the meaning of place is not the physical space, it's the stories that happened there, right? So just a suggestion.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Bearing, because it's like as we're moving into like this new age of, I don't know, it's not just digital. It's not just putting everything on digital, creating this digital experience. It's making sure the humanity, the human aspect isn't lost, which I feel we're losing in our day-to-day life, and maybe looking at how that can be recaptured in some way through.
I wonder if it, I'm wondering if it hasn't not been lost. In fact, what's happening now is the possibility to create it, ironically, which is what we're seeing with the protests, which we're seeing there. It's the greatest gift you can give to another person is the gift of existence, right? And so I think actually we're possibly discovering how essential that was, because often we only discover what was essential when it's lost.
I agree. What I'm seeing, like even with the kids and social media, we had to have a discussion about social media and say, not everything is for social media. When you're planning, our ancestors, when they were plotting the Underground Railroad, they didn't broadcast it. It was kept on the low. Not everything is for everyone. And because they post everything, the youth post everything, there are no filters. And so you have to say, okay, if you want to plan, plot, and strategize, not everybody can know your plan, or the plotting it just fails, you know? So yeah, I agree. Relearning how to sit with each other, social distancing at 6 feet, but working together a plan to come up with what the strategy is, right? You don't want those initial baby steps, infant steps to be public.
As you're speaking, cynical, I feel that you have, we were talking about that you have almost the exact problem about the opposite of what Bo was talking about in terms of digital media is kind of inhibiting your connection in terms of your production. Can you tell us about what's happening with the documentary you're making in LA and how you're unable to connect with the subjects and the talent in your film because of through the digital?
Right. So right now, I'm working on a documentary. The subjects of the doc are elders. So that is one issue, because they are high risk, as well as it involves traveling to some different countries and states where there are high rates. So the team, proposed, one of the producers proposed doing the interviews. I would have a remote camera crew film the subject, and I would conduct my interview through a Zoom call with my subject. And for me, especially a lot of times I deal with elders as my subjects, and it's a connection, right? They have to trust you. They need to look you. I need them to look me in my eye. I need them to feel my vibrations and know my intent. And I feel that would be lost during a Zoom call. And so it concerns me, but time is of essence. Again, these are elders, and subjects have passed and not been interviewed. So it's you have to make a decision. But I worry that I'm not going to get the best out of my subject.
So that's still something that you're struggling with to figure out how to, like what Bo was saying, to kind of use this as an opportunity to reconnect with people through digital, is something that you're still, I think that, and I'm saying that a lot of people are going to be having this same issue to kind of understand how to make that happen. Antoine, can you tell us a little bit about how you're engaging through the digital? You said you're putting your festival online, but before you were talking about how you're bringing robotics in and also looking at social justice as well. Can you show us how you're kind of expanding out and what that looks like?
Right. So, like as Cynical mentioned, we also are having to revisit the way that we engage. And to make the decision as a gallery, we decided that we still will have a physical show in the time of coronavirus. And what does that mean for us? We had selected like great works and are working with great people, and we still wanted to do that. But with the confines of the pandemic, there are risks that we just didn't want to impose on our colleagues and our mediators or young people who actually work in our gallery. So my colleague, Caroline White, procured 2 telepresence robots where our mediator cohort for this year will actually be remote the entire time, and they will interact with our visitors via this telepresence robot. So they'll do their mediation and engagement like they would normally, but not really. They won't be in the space. So like Bo mentioned, there is no way to really recreate an in-person, intimate experience, a conversation. But how can we create something that is similar in this time and still promote, what it is that we're doing in the gallery, and also employ people, right? Like, this is not a reason. The pandemic is more of a reason to keep people, active and employed. And we wanted to do that. So we're doing trainings at the moment and aren't really finding too many issues in its navigation, but it is a unique experience. I think the population of people in our gallery, those young voices there, and their absence will definitely be felt, and we hope that the experience, is comparable in terms of the way that we hope to engage our visitors and also create a space of informal learning. But in due time, we'll see. And what was the second part of your question, Karen?
You were talking about social justice.
Yeah.
And
so there are a myriad of things that are affecting the city of Detroit. Detroit is per capita the most populated city with Black people. And within that comes a host of issues that we are hoping to address and also be a part of the solutions for. So things within our exhibition, such as systems that relate to political systems. How can we think about ways of engaging in politics during this time? How do we invite young people to actually empower their voices and create those social changes that we're hoping for? In regards to other issues in our exhibition that also we're trying to work on in a social justice aspect is the impact of digital surveillance on Black people in Detroit. They're most recently the first person to be wrongly accused of a crime using artificial intelligence and digital surveillance was a Black man in Detroit. And that is something that we see as an issue that will be not only a local issue, but a global issue as these technologies emerge. And how can we be ahead of these issues, knowing that the technology is already being activated. So we are creating engagements around that, working with local community activists with the Detroit Community Technology Project, as well as yourself, Karen, to really figure out how to really create an equitable future for ourselves and also for the young people that we really, really believe have all of the capabilities to solve so many of the world's most pressing problems. And that is one of the, I think, partnerships, right? And is another way that we are impacting connection and social justice. So like, we can't do it alone. Like there's not one solution, but there are many. And so what we're doing is investing in just that. We had a open call for ideas recently under our rapid residency program. And we are trying to seek solutions to problems, not necessarily investing in the creation of artworks, but investing in ideas of individuals and connecting them with people who can help them progress this idea into something more tangible, if it ever gets to that point, but also acknowledging that the conversations that could be had in these arenas, digitally or in person via social distances, are powerful, and they are emerging, and they are, I think, a space for people to really understand their connection to one another, but also to the ever-changing landscape that is politics and social justice.
Yeah, I feel, as you mentioned, that we're working together doing this. I'm working with all these people actually as part of the Hack the Future Lab series, because as an artist in these times, I've been spending a quite last few months kind of contemplating what is the role of art and the artist in the times that we're living. And I've kind of come to the personal conclusion that as any form of creators, you're contributing to reality. You're a co-creator of reality. And I'm very conscious and intentional, and that's what I'm doing as a creator. But I kind of want to also remind other people and give them agency that they themselves are also co-creators of this reality at a time where most people, I feel, have never felt more helpless and hopeless. And starting from that context of, like, as a creative, figuring out how does digital work within that. That's the objective. And then how do we use this skill set? How do we use these tools? We're going to be using them in different ways with different objectives, like Bo was saying, or Cynical's discovered, because we're using them in for a different purpose. And like Katie's shown, in terms of the approach of artists is almost egoless, and that it's not about copyright, it's not about our name, it's about the work and getting the work out there. And it just seems like everything's distilled down to what's important. And I feel that's what we've been exploring today. Like, what is the purpose? What's the role? Why are we doing it? And Bo's insight into how it's affecting us neurologically. And just having that understanding and that purpose and that intention is why I've brought everyone here today, because I'm very kind of honored to see that everybody's further down that road. Like, you've been adapting to how the world has hit us, and you're like, okay, cool, let's brush ourselves off, let's keep on going. It's round 2, round 3. Katie might be on round 7 or round 12, but we keep getting up, and we keep working together as a community and as a network. And Cynical, when I first reached out to you, you kind of had this belief that actually you felt it was a good time now, right, to be a creative, which I was like, whoa, that's not what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was like we were so used to the fast, everyday moving, that when nature sits you back and you have to take a seat and just sit back and realize, like, you have time to think, like the earth needed to be cleansed, the sea cleaned up, because people were quarantined for I don't even know how many days, but the earth healed a little bit. So sometimes things make you rethink, like, don't take it as something bad. I mean, I was quarantined with my husband, and we got to learn each other in new ways. It was a little tricky at first, but you know, after days, you're like, okay, all right, we're gonna have to figure this out. But you know, you start doing different things with each other, and basically bringing it back to what Bo said, the human things. You know, we've gotten so far away from that because our day to day is so, you know, on to the next. You know.
That's
So
so
we've
true.
probably got.
Sorry, just to say, follow on from Zenek, if you don't mind, which is one of the greatest things your brain needs is to feel small but connected to the world around you, right? That's when we perceive awe. We've actually measured it, and when that happens, you're more willing to take risks. You feel closer to your, not only your in group but your out group. You're better able to sit without closure. You're better able to sit with uncertainty when you feel that small but connected. And that's what awe is, you know, to find the impossible within the common. And so, you know, as creators, one possibility is to create spaces for others to create. So the digital then becomes a Trojan horse for something else. The microphone becomes the excuse for the conversation. So we have an app, for instance, where people, you know, my niece was actually recording the stories of her grandmother, and my sister was listening, and I could hear the laughter of my grandmother. So there's 4 generations of women's laughter in that moment. And my mom's wisdoms were literally being encoded in my niece's brain. So that was the work. I was just the excuse, in some sense. It was just the microphone, but that was the piece. And so I think we can get intimacy and we can get physical proximity in this time, but we're so often wanting to present as opposed to enable others to hear, to listen, because the listener is actually part of the work, and the person listened to now it feels they exist.
Thank you. We've probably got I think 1 minute. If anybody if you just have last couple of few words from each of you before they kind of cut us off. Thank you all, but I'd like you to kind of finish, but thank you all. That was a nice ending, both. Thank you very much. But if there's any other comments from everybody, I'd love to just hear final comments. Oh, everybody's shy now. Okay,
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. It's lovely to meet everybody here.
Yes.
It's an honor. I feel humbled by the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for doing it.
And yeah, thank you very much. And I think, yeah, break the routine. That would be maybe the core, the value of the arts recently we are doing. So it's good to keep going. But of course, we want to get back to sort of normal, but let's see.
I would again like to thank everybody, because I'm truly inspired by what you're all doing. That you're not just talking a good game, you're all living it 100%, completely dedicated and devoted. And you're talking to me from your personal life experience, which is impacting not just you, but your network and your direct community. And then it spreads out even further to the rest of the world. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being time travelers as well, and coming back that little bit further part in the future to let the people here today know how they can survive what is to come. Thank you.
Thank you.